A very good evening and welcome to this Retina UK webinar. Retina UK are hosting a series of webinars on a different topic each month. We'll be delivering at least one every month. We're really pleased to welcome Dominic Milne, who is a legal rights officer with RNIB. Dominic will be taking us through maximising your income by ensuring that you have access to various types of social security grants and benefits. So there will be an opportunity for you to ask Dominic questions at the end of the presentation this evening, and we'll be collecting your questions as you think of them. So if you have a question, please type it in the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer, or if you're on a mobile device, tablet, for example, you will find that under reactions, and the Q&A box is there. So please leave your questions throughout the presentation this evening, and we will ask them for you at the end of Dominic's presentation. So we will endeavour to answer as many questions as we possibly can. However, anything we're not able to get to today will be followed up over the next couple of weeks. So thank you once again for joining us, and without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Dominic Milne.
Hello everybody, good evening. I'm just going to stop my show for a moment and hopefully you'll be able to see me now. I hope everybody can see me at the moment. Yeah, welcome, thank you for inviting me tonight, it's very kind. I'm going to put my slides on now. Let's just get my slideshow back on the screen. Here we are. And can I just check that everybody can actually see my slideshow at the moment?
Not at the moment, Dominic.
Not at the moment. Okay, bear me 1 second. That's not worked. Hold on. Right. Okay. Share screen. Here we go. Okay, 1 second. Can you see it now?
There you go. So yeah, if you just go back into presentation mode, and we're all good to go.
Yep, splendid. Here we go. Okay, if that's good, we can move on from there. Fabulous. Yes, like I said, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to talk tonight about maximising your income, what we do at the Legal Rights Service within RNIB. We have a number of different hats, but the key one, or the key one for me especially, and for another 2 members of our team, is to make sure that people have got all the social security support they can. And the way we do that is we basically maximise people's benefits as best we can. And we also make sure that any other sources of help they can get, that they're available to them. Now, it's quite a multifaceted thing, but what we do, I mean, obviously at RNIB, we have quite a big team of people. We have a team of excellent advisors. And what we do is we inform them and we train them in social security benefits. We give them fact sheets, and we design toolkits and fact sheets and all kinds of other ways of giving them information that they can then pass out to people. So what I'm going to do tonight, there are a number of things here. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, as I'm sure you'll be well aware. And that's made us very busy recently. We've actually been doing quite a lot of work to try and make sure that all the avenues that are possible for people are going to be covered. Now, I'm going to talk initially about benefits, and just to give you a quick flavour of what there is within the social security system. We have a fairly massive, I would say, list of benefits that are out there. There's all kinds of benefits. The ones on the screen now are all what they call non-means tested benefits, which means that it doesn't matter what you've got coming in. If you qualify for these benefits, you'll get them. There are also a lot of means tested benefits, and here's a list of them, some of which you will have heard of: universal credit, and then there's housing benefit, income support, ESA, job seekers allowance, and the tax credits, and pension credit. Now, what I'm going to do, there's a lot of this stuff there flying around, there's a lot of information. However, what we can do, thank goodness, is that we can reduce that down to the ones which are generally really, really important to know about. The reason for that is because they are the ones that are massively underclaimed. They are benefits that apply to an awful lot of people, and especially apply to people, in this instance, with disabilities. Now, our customers, our people with blind and partially sighted, they invariably will qualify for some of the benefits that are in front of us here. However, there's a great many people who don't claim those benefits. So what we've got here, and the ones that we're going to look at, and I'm going to run through them each in turn, giving you a brief flavour of each and how they work. Personal independence payment, or PIP, as it's well known. Disability living allowance, DLA, been around a long time. Attendance allowance, and then under that we've got carers allowance as well. And then beneath them, the other two we're going to look at are pension credit and universal credit. Now, to try and talk about all these benefits and get all the detail in would be impossible in a short time. But what we can do, and I do this kind of session quite frequently for new workers at RNIB and for iClinic liaison officers generally in the industry, is we look at raising awareness, and having an awareness of these benefits and what they do is really key. And there's a very good reason for that. There's so many people. I'm just going to flick through to the next slide before I go back again. There are 14.6 million people in the UK who have a disability. That's kind of the most recent figure that we have. Around 4 million of those people claim a disability benefit, PIP or DLA. So that leaves about 10 million who don't actually receive any disability benefit. Now, that is a lot of people who are disabled. They wouldn't all qualify because they might not all pass the hit all the criteria, but a massive amount of them probably would if they claimed. Okay, really important that this is one of the key things that I'm going to hopefully get everybody to take away with them today. Now, the key disability benefits, I've just mentioned them in the last slide. And what we do is we look at them as they go through life. Disability living allowance, DLA, it's a benefit for under 16s. Now, disability living allowance was around for years before the emergence of the next one along, PIP. But disability living allowance is now only newly claimed for people under 16. It does still exist with people who are older who are still getting it. That's a different story. They can still get it if you've been awarded it in the past. However, generally speaking, if you're under 16 now, it would be a DLA claim. If you're of working age, from 16 up to state pension age, personal independence payment, PIP, that is the key benefit. That's one of the key ones we'll look at in a minute. And then after state pension age, once you get to that age, it would be attendance allowance. Now, if you qualify for PIP before you get to state pension age, you can keep getting it. But if you're making a new claim after pension age, it's attendance allowance. Now, there's a great many reasons why this is so important to talk about the disability benefit, the way that it's not claimed. A claimant can get one of these benefits if you meet the tests for them, and it doesn't matter what your income is, what your savings or your capital are, it doesn't matter at all. You can actually get these benefits on top of anything else that you get in life. Now, that sounds, in one respect, that sounds very generous, but it generally isn't. The statistics are that this is fairly a general statistic for people who are disabled, is that something like an extra 583 on average pounds per month extra is what you need to be able to cope. And in some instances, it's a lot more than that. So having some extra disability benefit, it gives you that chance to have to cover some of those costs that people who don't have a disability don't have. Now, as I say, that you can get it on top of anything else that you've got. You're not taxed. It's paid in addition to other benefits if you're on other benefits or income that you have. Now, as far as sight loss is concerned, there isn't a specific benefit as such for people with sight loss. However, being certified doesn't equal entitlement to any benefit, but if you have certification and if you have sight loss generally, the likelihood is you will probably qualify for something, or you'll have a very good chance of qualifying for one of these disability benefits. We had a look at that a second ago. Now, as I say, I'm going to go through these in turn. Each of these benefits, what I want you to do is, if possible, if you can try and take away a bit of an awareness today of what it is that makes them tick, what it is that makes you qualify for them. We have lots of other information available, lots and lots. We have fact sheets, we have all kinds of things that are really useful when it comes to making claims. So But in terms of giving you a brief view of these benefits, let's have a look at PIP first. Now, PIP consists of two things, the daily living component and the mobility component. The kinds of things they look at with the daily living component are things like getting out of bed, preparing food, taking nutrition, managing your condition, managing your therapy maybe, using a bath, managing the toilet, getting dressed and undressed, reading and understanding signs and symbols, which is very, very key, and engaging with other people face to face, communicating, all kinds of different things that you might have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And on top of that, we have mobility activities, planning, following journeys, and then there's another way, which is if you actually have problems moving around physically, if you have actual, say, physical pain or a disability that means that you can't necessarily walk or walk very easily. Now, looking at all those things, looking at the PIP activities, and this is one of the biggest issues that we have, and what people tend to misunderstand is that they look at those things and they think, well, I can do those things. I can manage. I get by. I can do those things. However, what they need to look at, and what we always look at, is the fact that they have to apply this thing. This is what they call Regulation 4 of the PIP regs, and it's a very key one, because all those things that I've described in the last slide, all those activities, you don't actually necessarily, you're not necessarily deemed as being able to do them if you can't do them safely, which means in a manner that's unlikely to cause harm to yourself or someone else, to an acceptable standard, repeatedly, i.e. it might be that you can do one of those activities once, but if you try to repeat it, you'd struggle because of fatigue or difficulties, of other types of difficulties. And finally, and this is a really key one, within a reasonable time period. And that means twice as long as it would take a person without your condition. Now, if you, for example, or if a claimant can get dressed or can take a bath, that's fine. But if it takes you twice as long as it would if you didn't have your disability or your condition, you would actually be able to tick the box, which would mean that you would get points for that. And this is what people don't tend to understand, because an awful lot of people do live alone and get this benefit. Now, with PIP, as with all these disability benefits, it's not about the help that you actually get. It's about the help you require. They call it underlying need. That's what really counts. Lots of people live on their own and get PIP. They don't get the help they need to do the things that they do, and they manage to do those things. However, if they take them so long, or it's so difficult for them to do safely or cleanly, or whatever the issue might be, you can get the points and you can get the benefit. In order to get the standard care or the enhanced care of PIP, it's 8 points or 12 points. And then the mobility is 8 points and 12 points too. Okay, I've whizzed through PIP, and there's a reason, well, the main reason I'm doing that is because of the time we have. Really important, really key that we look at that point again. With PIP, as with all the other ones, which we're going to talk about in a minute, not about the help that you get. It really is. It's about the difficulties that you have, the time it takes. And you can argue, hang on, yeah, yes, of course, I can tick the box to say I can do this, but it takes such a long time. It's tricky. It's awkward. It may be that when it comes to preparing food, you can't use hot pans because it's not safe. Whatever the reasons might be, and there are plenty of them that are potential, that would be a reason for getting points and getting PIP. And an awful lot of people don't get it who should. And that's the bottom line here. Now, attendance allowance is the benefit for people who are over pension age. Once again, huge numbers of people don't claim. There's a statistic coming up in a minute on one of the slides, which is basically saying that people of pension age, something like 62 or 3% of them, don't ever look at what they might be able to claim. Never has it been more important now in this kind of really tough time that we're going through at the moment in terms of finance and inflation, energy bills. Really important to get this benefit if you can. Now, for attendance allowance, this is just two rates. There's a low rate and a higher rate. And on here, we've got exactly how they define that. The lower rate is for people who need either attention, which means help, or supervision during the day or the night. So it could be that you're fine at night, but you need help during the day. Fine, that would tick the lower rate box. The higher rate, however, is for people who need attention or supervision during the day and the night. Now, that attention or supervision does not have to be constant. It needs to be frequent or regular. And that really doesn't mean all the time. If you, for example, and this is a good way of, the best way to sum this up, I think, is that at night, if you have difficulty 3 times a night, and you need 20 minutes worth of help of some description, whether that be getting to the bathroom, getting back, making sure you're safe, making sure you don't fall, etc., that would tick the box for the nighttime needs. So it's really important, really key to know that. What they mean when they talk about attention, it means help from another person to do the things that you can't do for yourself. And once again, I keep saying this, you don't have to be actually getting the help. And the personal help that you need has to be in connection with your bodily functions. And that's things like, I've made a big list of them here. It's not exhaustive, there are more. Breathing, hearing, seeing, cooking, eating, drinking, walking, sitting, sleeping, getting in and out of bed, washing, getting in and out of the bath, using the toilet, shaving, communicating, help with medication. There are others, it can be anything where somebody has to help you deal with one of those things, like a bodily function. Now, what it won't help you with is if you, for example, need help with the shopping, because you don't have to be with somebody when they're doing the shopping, or they don't have to be with you when they're doing the shopping even, whereas they would have to be with you if they were helping you get in and out of the bath. So it's about things where you need somebody in, I guess, in close proximity, or at least nearby with you, helping you, making sure you're safe. That's what they mean by that. And when it comes to supervision, they mean it's about someone having around, fairly straightforward, this to prevent accidents to yourself or others. But continual supervision sounds a long time, but it doesn't mean all the time. It means frequent or regular. And I mentioned just now about the nighttime needs. That's really kind of a key thing to note. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be a fairly regular thing. Yeah, just to say finally about attendance allowance, I'll probably keep saying this evening. Not enough people claim it who should be getting it. They really don't. There's an awful lot of underspend on that by the government, and the difference it can make financially is fairly significant. And I'm going to take a final brief look now at the disability benefits. The final one is disability living allowance, DLA. Now, this is the one that you would claim now for a child, and it's very similar. All the things I just described about attendance allowance. The middle rate is actually the same in money and in kind of rules, more or less, as the low rate of the attendance allowance. It's for children who need attention or help or supervision during the day or the night. Higher rate for people who need attention or supervision during the day and the night. So if you need both, you might get the higher rate. There's also a lower rate, though, for disability living allowance, and that's for children who need attention or help from another person for a significant portion, and that means about an hour. Not exactly an hour. Doesn't have to be all at once. It could be 6 lots of 10 minutes or 3 lots of 20 minutes. As long as it roughly works out to what they would describe as a significant portion. Doesn't have to be constant, just needs to be frequent or regular. Same rules again. Lots and lots of people don't realise that they are spending that much extra time looking after their child because of the child's condition. They get used to doing it, becomes the norm. They're happy to do it. But when you look at it objectively, and then you put it down on paper and you discuss it with them, you can find that actually, yes, they're spending a lot more time with a child who has a condition. So it's really important that those benefits are claimed wherever possible. Once again, it's not about the help you get. It's not about whether or not you're getting somebody helping you to prove that you need the help. It's about whether you require it, whether the underlying need is there. Yeah, it's one of the key things, I think. It's one of the things I've been doing for years and years now. We try our level best to get take-up of benefit up as much as we can. And as I say, it's never been quite so key, I think, as it is at the moment. Yeah, lots of people live alone who don't have a carer get disability benefits. So that's really key. That's one of the key things I think you can look at, and people can look at with their condition, and see whether or not, is there anything there? Okay, yeah, actually, maybe I tick the boxes for that. It might be that you've got the benefit, but you're on a low rate, and you think it might be a good idea to possibly look at getting a higher rate. That's a possibility as well. All those things I would say you should contact our helpline for, which you'll get the helpline number several times here. Just to look very quickly at the amounts, this isn't too important, I suppose, at the moment, but this gives you an example of how similar they are for each. So just running down it, PIP Care, the daily living of PIP at 61.85 is exactly the same as DLA, middle care 61.85, and which is exactly the same as AA, Attendance Allowance 61.85. They all have the same rules for the same parts of the day and so on. I will pass these slides on. I'll pass these to Matthew at the end. I'll send them through, and then they can be, you can browse through them at your own leisure after that. But I'll keep moving now in terms of just getting through the different things that we need to look at. When it comes to completing forms for these benefits and making claims, as I say, read the RNIB PIP toolkit and benefits. You can get the fact sheets for the pointers on how to claim. You can get assistance. We do actually have RNIB volunteers who can assist with this, and the DWP also have a home visiting service. The pandemic played a bit of havoc with all the visiting actually, but it seems to be coming back into fruition now, and people are starting to, the service is becoming possible again. Really important when making a claim, you get as much information and evidence as you can. And there's the helpline for the first time on here, 0303 123 9999. You ring our helpline, you'll be able to get an assessment of where you're at, what kind of, what level of benefit or which benefit it might be that you could claim. That's a really key thing to do. I've said it again here, it's getting a bit repetitious, isn't it? About making sure that that you remember that it's about the help you need, not what you're actually getting. I'll quickly mention this benefit, carers allowance. The reason this is a key one in a way, because if somebody is getting one of those benefits that I've mentioned, at least in the PIP care or the DLA care or the attendance allowance, the mobility side of things doesn't impact on this, but people who are getting the care or the daily living, etc., somebody can then get a carers allowance for looking after them, as long as they're over 16, not a student, and they're not working or earning over £132 a week. Carers allowance is very common. It's claimed a lot, especially by the partners or the family members of people who are on DLA or PIP or attendance allowance. Very regularly claimed. It's worth being aware of. If you had an award or somebody in your household had an award of one of the disability benefits, our helpline would pick up on it straight away if there was any possibility of getting that extra benefit as well. Right, the thing about those disability benefits I've just been describing, they are the biggest trench of benefits that are required in terms of non-means tested benefits, things that you can get which don't affect anything else. These, however, here are what we call the means tested benefits. And these, I'm going to go through each of these in turn actually. I'm going to do them in reverse order. We're going to look at universal credit, but first we're going to look at pension credit. Now, pension credit, you will have heard of it, I'm sure. It's a benefit for people who are fairly obviously of pension age. It's a benefit you claim when you hit pension age, state pension age. It tops up the existing income that you have to a level that the government considers to be a minimum income. They call it the guarantee credit. So in other words, if your income is low, you may have some state retirement pension, which is not massively big, or you may have a private pension. If your income is less than a certain amount, what pension credit does is it tops it up to the level that the government think you should have. And those amounts are, if you're single, £182.60 a week. No pensioner should be on less than £182.60 per week. And if they are, they should be getting pension credit. If they're a couple, it's £278.70. So if you're a couple and the money you have coming in between you doesn't add up to that, you should be getting it and you should get that pension credit. Children's amounts can be added to that where applicable. I won't go into that now, but if you were responsible for looking after a child, then you could get extra amounts. One of the key things to, and this is one of the really important things to mention, is that if you've got a pensioner, who is receiving, for example, attendance allowance, or is getting the PIP daily living or the DLA middle high care if they're still on that after all this time. And if you live alone, and if no one's getting a carer's allowance for you or any other kind of carer benefit, you actually get an extra £69.40 a week added onto your pension credit. So not only do you get the attendance allowance, but you get the pension credit with another £69.40 added on. If you're a couple and you both get attendance allowance, and we see this a lot, you get it a lot actually, you get elderly couples, they both get attendance allowance, your pension credit amount will then will have another £138.80 added to it, which is double £69.40. So there is a couples rate as well. And if one of you is a carer for the other, if maybe one of you gets the attendance allowance or PIP and the other one is looking after you and they get the carer's allowance, then you'll get an extra £38.65 added on. All these premiums, I'll just go back to that, all these premiums that I mentioned, the severe disability premium, the carer premium, they are massively undertaken up. There's a huge amount. I've done so much take-up work in my life, in my working life. I've paid so many visits over the years to pensioners and very quickly ascertained that actually, is this all you've got coming in? In that case, we should be claiming this, we should be claiming that straight away. And the difference it can make to people's lives is phenomenal when you get that income maximised. Just a quick word on savings and capital, actually. Capital, if you have capital under 10,000, it doesn't make any difference to your benefit, to your pension credit. If you've got money over 10,000 in the bank, then £1 is taken off your weekly pension credit for every 500. So there is a little bit of if you have savings that are quite high, then that would gradually diminish your pension credit, but only slightly. It's only £1 for every 500. So you might get that knocked off as your savings are, depending on how high they are. But that doesn't include the value of your house that you live in, ever. Just really worth pointing that out. The value of your house that you live in doesn't count as capital because you're living in it. I'll do a quick scenario here. I'll go through it fairly quickly. Mr. Smith is 70, Mrs. Smith 68. They have sight loss. Mr. Smith has been diagnosed with glaucoma and he's got arthritis in his hands. Needs help with all his day-to-day activities, washing, dressing, medicating himself, moving around, but he's fine at night, no problem there. Whereas Mrs. Smith has retinitis pigmentosa and she struggles without help. Now they own their own home, which is great, no housing costs. And the only income they have though is his state retirement pension and her private pension, 160 and 100, making 260 quid a week. Now the couples rate, just to give you a quick idea of what might happen there, is their couples rate is 278.70. Their income is 260, so the difference is £18.70, and that's how much pension credit they get extra. If they both got attendance allowance though, because they've both got conditions there where they're struggling with, that 278.70 would have another 138.80 added to it. So the weekly applicable amount, or guaranteed credit as they call it with pension credit, would be 417.70. So once you've taken away their income, they get another 257.70 per week. Makes a huge difference. It really does if they get the attendance allowance that they deserve. Just a quick note as well, if you're claiming pension credit, you can still get, if they had rent, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, housing benefit would help pay the rent for them. Whereas if you're of working age, if you need help with your rent, it tends to be, well, it always is universal credit. There are one or two exceptions, but not many. I keep saying it, pension credit, once again, massively underclaimed, hugely underclaimed. More than 60% of people over pension age never actually check if they're receiving enough money to live on. So it's really important that we do that. The government has actually done a take-up campaign in recent months, and it has worked quite well. We've done a fairly heavy one as well at RNIB. We've pushed it very, very heavily, trying to get people to claim. And it does seem to be working. We've had a huge rise in queries about it on our helpline. Okay, I'm going to do a quick whiz through universal credit now, which is it's more complicated, unfortunately. So I'll probably gloss over one or two of these slides now, but I have laid out the slides in such a way that I think if you were to read them after, you'd probably find you'd be all right. It should make reasonable sense. as with pension credit, it's a means tested benefit. So what it does is it tops up your existing level of income to what the government consider should be the minimum. Universal credit has been and is quite a controversial benefit because it's replacing income related ESA. It's replacing job seekers allowance, income support, housing benefit. All of those will be replaced by universal credit for people by 2028. Child tax credit and working tax credit are going to be replaced by it in late 2024, so in about 2 years. It's paid monthly, and it does include your housing costs or your rent, your eligible rent. Now, the same basic principles apply as they do with pension credit. Like your household income is added up, it's compared with your maximum amount for the individual or your family. And that maximum amount is made of amounts for individuals, couples, and their children. Extra amounts can be added on to universal credit if you're unable to work. So that involves you going through something called a work capability assessment, which is another story in itself. And we do a lot of work with that. I do an awful lot of work with the government. I've been into Parliament once or twice to talk to the Works and Pensions Select Committee about this. It's a complicated scenario when you're dealing with the work capability assessment, or it can be, and it takes quite a lot of time. An amount can be added if you're a carer, and any eligible rent figure can be added. When I say eligible, you can add your rent in, but it can only be of a level which the local authority have agreed is the right level for that area. So if it's any more than that, you'd have to find the difference yourself, which is another controversial one. But we'll mention that a bit later again briefly as well, actually. And if you're working, you don't just use your whole earnings as your income that you compare with your maximum amount. You take 55% of them, and that's the figure you use. And you can also have a work allowance knocked off that figure, which it depends if you've got what they call limited capability for work, if you get assessed as having that, or indeed if you've got children, you can knock off. There's two different levels, 344 or 573. I don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty of universal credit, so I might speed this one on a bit. Here are the amounts that we have for it. Let's not worry too much about those. I think what I would say also, though, it's worth pointing out, if you've got £6,000 or under, no problem at all. That's fine. You can still have universal credit, and it won't affect your claim at all. And jumping to the bottom of that slide, if you have 16,000 or more, you can't claim universal credit, so you wouldn't be able to have a claim. But in between, if you've got between 6 and 16,000, you lose £4.35 a month off your universal credit for every 250 you're part of. Okay, yeah, I mean, basically how it works is you calculate what your maximum amount is for you and your family. You add any elements that apply. You add on your rent, and then you look at your income. You take off a work allowance, and you take 55% of that, and that becomes your earnings figure. Like I said, I'd rather not get too much into the nitty-gritty of this because it is a little bit more complicated. However, it will all make sense, and I've got an example here about a lady called Jill who is 30 years old, and she has a daughter. She rents a flat for 400. She works part-time, earns £500, but she cares for her mother. She lives by and is on attendance allowance, the mother. So for Jill, the amounts for her would be the following amounts: 334 for a single person, 290 for the child, 168.81 for being a carer, and that much for her rent. That's how we would put together a maximum allowance. Her wages of 500 would knock 344 off that because she's got a child making 156. 55% of that is 85.80. And that is what would come off Jill's wages, and then she would get that for a universal credit. So she'd have that universal credit amount, some wages and rent, £400 rent that she'd have to pay. Now, I think the key thing with universal, I've gone very quick through that, kind of deliberately. If people want to look at that and read through the example afterwards when I send the information around, that's fine. And if you have any questions, you can obviously come to us about that. The main thing I want to point, the main point that I want to make with universal credit is it's really key that people make a claim if they can. There's a lot of people who are on the old benefits, on the ESA income support, job seekers allowance, that's fine. If you're on those, that's fine. They're usually, I'll say usually, in most instances, we tend to find they're slightly more generous than universal credit. However, if you need to make a claim now, it would have to be universal credit because it's replacing those other benefits. It's really key to do a check. One of the biggest things that we're doing at the moment is making sure that people check what they can get. These are really tough times in terms of what's going on. There's some help from the government, which I'll mention again in a moment. But in the main, it's really important that you check your disability benefit status and your means tested benefit status. And that's going to be pension credit or universal credit if you are of a working age. Yeah, that's the really, really key messages that if from nothing else this evening, if you come away thinking, actually, yeah, disability benefits, they're more of a possibility than I would have thought they were. And if you're looking at your income and thinking, okay, yeah, it's possible that I might fall within one of these brackets for getting some help. It doesn't cost anything to get it checked. So you can give us a ring. Somebody on our helpline will probably do it on the spot. If it's any more complicated, they might ask you to ring back and they'll spend a session going through stuff to see what you qualify for. But they'll probably have a very good idea very quickly of what might be able to be claimed. The other thing that's really worth pointing out, and this is one of the major things that the Legal Rights Service do that I'm involved in, is about challenging decisions. Now, if you can challenge a decision within a month of a decision, either to say yes or no for a benefit. You can be late with that if you've got a good reason, but generally speaking, it's best to cover the deadlines if you can. If you've, for example, made a claim for PIP and you've been turned down, they've said, no, we don't think you qualify, it is well worth checking to see if that's correct. The big reason for that is 62% of PIP decisions are changed in favour of the claimant at appeal. And 60% of those decisions are changed without any different information going forward. So it's not like you've made a claim and then they've looked at it again and you've given them something else to ponder and maybe work in your favour. It's a very high level. The other thing that I will say, I haven't written this down in here, but RNIB, we do representation for people who've been turned down. And the percentage that RNIB's welfare benefits site loss advisors get is near enough 100%. They will do an assessment, and when they look at a case, if they think it's got legs and it will go forward, they will invariably win it. It's well worth challenging decisions. The DWP don't get them all right. That's no surprise, I imagine. They're very busy, the DWP. Give them give them a little bit of slack on that. They are very busy. They're trying to make a lot of decisions, and they don't always get claims that have been made fully and perhaps with as much detail as was necessary. But it's well worth challenging always. Get advice from our helpline and challenge. If you're struggling financially in any way, contact us for a benefit check. We'll be able to check whether your income's sufficiently low to warrant pension credit or universal credit. We can assess your eligibility for any appropriate disability benefit. Helpline number there is 0303 123 9999. Now, at the moment, I've mentioned the cost of living crisis a few times. The other sources of help out there are cost of living support payments. Excuse me. A lot of them have been you'd have heard them maybe in the budget recently, the autumn statement by the Chancellor. They're being paid automatically. So if you are eligible, you should get them automatically. One or two of them I know have had a bit of a delay on, especially the vouchers for people who were getting energy help, who use meters, use pay-as-you-go meters. That help is being sorted, I believe, and it is a bit late. But broadly speaking, if you qualify for a cost of living support payment because you're on a means-tested benefit or on a disability benefit, you'll get those. If you're not getting them, do get in touch. There's a whole new raft of them have been announced for next year, of course, all of which we'll have in a we have an FAQ thing about the cost of living payments. We have one for this year, which is still current. There'll be a new one coming out in January once we know the dates of the new payments. Like I say, they should be automatic and you should get them if you qualify. Now, the other things that are worth mentioning quickly are the Household Support Fund. That was another one that Jeremy Hunt mentioned in his speech, in his statement. They've added another billion to this, I think, or is it even 2 billion? I'm not sure. It's quite a lot of money. This is the Household Support Fund. This is something that is run by local authorities. And what they do is they give the money, the government gives the money to local authorities, and they decide who should have it. But it's to help with things like, well, anything where you're struggling. If you're struggling to support yourself or your family, the Household Support Fund, you can make an application to it. Well worth knowing about. We haven't got any real experience of knowing how people are getting on with that. We know it's obviously local authorities are under some pressure, but it's well worth being aware of. And if you need any assistance, you can get in touch with us about that. Warm Homes Discount Scheme. This is a bit controversial again. It used to be available for everybody on a disability benefit, but not anymore. It's only available for people who are on the pension credit that I mentioned, on the guarantee element of pension credit, and also other people as well on means tested benefits who make an application for it. However, well worth looking into if you need that help. And the final one I've mentioned here is discretionary housing payments. This is where your rent is not being covered by your benefit, because your rent may be slightly higher than your local authority housing allowance, i.e. that's kind of the amount that they think you ought to be paying in your area. And if your rent's a bit more than that, a discretionary housing payment can cover that difference for you, but it's not for long. They tend to award it for a short while, whilst you then find some other means of dealing with it or moving. So it's not a massive help, but it is a help. Discretionary housing payments are there to hopefully assist people, at least in the short term. Now, all of this information is in our RNIB cost of living fact sheet, a copy of which can go around to everybody who would like one today, along with these slides, along with our helpline number, and along with any other information that you feel you might like. As I say, we've got fact sheets on all the benefits that I've been talking about. And I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to hopefully take some questions. I'll stop sharing my screen, and fingers crossed, we will have a little bit of time now and get some questions in.
Great, thanks, Dominic. That was really, really useful. Benefits is something that we're often asked about, and we do typically refer to the RNIB team. You guys have got a wealth of experience in that arena, so best laid to defer to yourselves. So as I said before, anybody with any questions, please do leave them in the Q&A section. I've got a couple here just to start with, Dominic. You kind of mentioned the kind of the government-related and the social security benefits as such. Can you talk around any other things like TV license and such like that people can apply for discounts and things that way?
I think it was probably easier because I haven't got any information directly to hand on that. There is, I'm trying to think what would be the best way of doing that. We do have information that I can send through, which might be easier. We do have some information about those kinds of the benefits like that. Also, there are things like the blind person's tax allowance, of course, which is there available for people who are working, which has been raised recently. I think probably easier, Matthew, if I can get some information and send it through to you on those extra things, the things that I'm more focused on myself or regularly dealing with are the benefits and also some of the other cost of living payments and things.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So we've actually got no questions from the floor at the moment. There's lots of you here, plenty of questions to be asked, I'm sure. What was that helpline number again for RNIB to make contact?
Yeah, it's 0303 123 9999.
Lovely. And people just need to ask about benefits advice.
Yeah, if they just ask, if they just literally say, I'd like a benefits check, and then give a brief description of what their position is, what the condition is, straight away, the advisor in question will be able to, bring up what might be available, what's worth looking into. if they want to have a bit more of an in-depth chat with them, they might ask them to call back and then give them a longer appointment. And they can actually there's a calculation, an actual benefit calculation for the means tested benefits, where they can actually look in and see, how much money is coming in, what could be getting paid out in the event of a claim for pension credit or universal credit. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, you mentioned before about the appeals process. I mean, I can, I've been through that process myself. Albeit a good number of years ago, RNIB supported me through that, and we went to appeal, and DWP didn't even turn up at court. So it was that was yeah, it was a very, very easy process to go through, and the advisors were really, really supportive. So it's nice to know that kind of thing still happens.
Yeah, it's still there. What would happen initially if you get turned down? You've got a month to request what they call a mandatory reconsideration. That just means another DWP decision maker will have a look at it. You've then got another month from the decision of that to go to appeal. The people who we work with, the welfare rights specialist workers who deal with those cases, they do a lot of the mandatory reconsiderations, and a lot of them are very successful straight away with the work that they do, with the help that they give. The ones that aren't successful then go to appeal, and they're very successful with them. The ones that they're not successful with actually come then to me and to a colleague of mine, and we then actually appeal the appeal. And if the appeal that we go to, they call the upper tribunal, if we're successful there, the decision can then become law. So one of the key things we like, where we do get a negative decision, we like to follow it through higher. And if the issues there are very contentious, you can get a decision in your favor. That will then become precedent law for other people. And it kind of spreads out, therefore, and helps more people. But the guys who are doing it, the team who are doing the mandatory reconsiderations of appeals, they're massively successful, honestly, a very, 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 very high standard and a very high success rate.
That's great. Right, we're going to try something here. So according to my thing here, we have somebody with a hand up. So I'm just going to see if I can allow this person to talk.
Okay.
So on my screen is Sandra. If you're there, Sandra, you should have a pop-up.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Hi. Yeah, I couldn't actually write in the question and answer pop-up box because it wasn't letting me. So
Okay.
I don't know if other people are having that problem. But what I just wanted, it's not really a question, it's just about the warm home discount scheme. I've noticed that not the criteria, but the process for that has changed this year. I went online to see about claiming it, and the government the government website just basically says that you don't have to do anything, you don't have to apply to it even to your energy supplier, and that you'll just be notified by the government if you're entitled to it. And I have subsequently had a letter from the DWP to say that I should be getting the payment, and again, I don't need to do anything. They'll just contact the energy company on my behalf.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's really
just
good.
Seems to have changed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear that is actually happening. We've had a few people who come to us and said they weren't getting the contact that they'd hoped for. I mean, the other thing that you will get, of course, or you should get, is there's an extra £300 going to people in the warm home. The winter fuel payment. So there's actually a £500 extra fuel payment coming to people of pension age in the winter. That's going to be, I say in the winter, we're in the winter now, but it's going to be probably in January time. There's normally £200, and they're adding another 300 to that, which is a massive help. Once again, it's automatic. We have to keep an eye on the automatic payment system because it doesn't always work as well as it might. But it sounds like in your case it has been, Sandra, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, and just to say, mine isn't because of having the pension credit either, because I'm on universal
You're on
credit.
universal credit. You're on
Yeah,
you tick the boxes for it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate the way it was before. Sadly, I think about 300,000 people are going to miss out this year because they've removed it for automatic entitlement for people on disability benefits, because that used to be one of the criteria. We argued heavily against that because it was people who have disabilities tend to need more heating. They tend to be at home more. It's the same principle as actually they apply to giving more money to pensioners, because you tend to be, there's more of a likelihood you're going to need more heating. You're going to be at home more. That exact same set of reasoning works entirely with people who are disabled, but it's not actually going automatically to disabled people, only to those who, well, people who are on the means tested benefit element, like universal credit. So as long as it's happening, Sandra, that's absolutely great. But there's an awful lot of people who are still fighting to try and get more help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sandra, thanks so much for your question. That was fantastic. Thank you. So one thing I just wanted to raise about these automatic benefits. So just a little bit of fraud prevention as well. There are a huge number of people who are receiving text messages at the moment to say that you're eligible for this payment, and then you click on a link on your mobile phone, for example. That is a scam. Don't click on any of those links. You won't be sent a link like that. You will automatically get the payment if that is the normal way of doing so. So please do be vigilant with things like that. A number of people have been caught out, just in sheer desperation to try and get some additional money in at this time of year. We have got one question. Can one claim PIP and attendance allowance?
No, you can't. You can only get one at a time. What tends to happen is if people make a claim for PIP and their condition doesn't look like it's going to get better, they will get what they call a no fixed term award. And that means that they'll just keep getting it, or they'll have they might have something called a light touch review, which means they basically just get contacted after several years, probably 10 years, and asked if anything's changed. If you get that PIP and you're awarded it and your award goes on and on, it can go until the end of your life. It can go until you're 90 or more. You can only get one or the other, though. You can't then get attendance allowance as well. If you were making a claim for attendance allowance for the first time, if you're making a claim for a disability benefit for the first time, if you're over pension age, it would have to be attendance allowance. The big difference is, and it is a key point actually, when we were looking at those earlier, attendance allowance doesn't have a mobility component. It only has 2 lots of care component, whereas PIP has daily living, which is the same as care, and mobility. And if you get the mobility awarded before you reach pension age, you can keep getting it for the rest of your life, but you can't make a new claim for it on attendance allowance. So actually making a claim, sometimes we do get people who are approaching pension age, and it is a key thing to say, actually get a claim in for PIP quickly, because if you do qualify for mobility, you can then keep getting it, but you won't be able to make a claim for it beyond your pension age birthday. But no, you can only get one at a time. It's the same with DLA, actually, just to mention, because if you're a child and you get DLA, when you get to 16, you get a letter telling you to claim PIP. And as long as you claim PIP, you'll keep getting DLA until your PIP decision gets made. But if you don't do that, your DLA will just end at 16, because you can only get one of these benefits at any given time.
Excellent. That's really useful. So for me at the moment, for example, I'm claiming PIP. When I get to pension age, I appreciate obviously things may change, but if the current status quo is as it is, then would I then continue to claim PIP, or would I at pension age switch to attendance allowance?
No, there's no reason. If you're happy with the PIP amount you get, especially if it includes a mobility element, just keep getting it. They might still do a review. They might look to see if you still have the condition. But as long as you have, then you'll keep getting it. As long as you still hit the criteria notes for it, which you did before you were pension age, you'll keep getting it. So it's a good idea to try and get that award in place. I think if there's mobility involved, get it in place before pension age, and then you can keep running on with it for as long as you like.
That's fantastic. Lovely. Thank you very much. Right, we've got no other questions that have come through. There was an awful lot of information there that's been shared. I've certainly learned a lot. Thank you, Dominic. Would you share the helpline number again, just for RNIB?
I will indeed. It's 0303 123 9999. So that's 0303 123 9999. And I'll share the slides. I'll send you the slides, Matthew, and you can pass them around. And I'll also send the cost of living fact sheet that we have, and the frequently asked question one as well that we've got at the moment for this year's payments. I'll send all that through, and you can circulate it around. And if anybody wants to get in touch, then they by all means can do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we will. We'll certainly do that. So, Dominic, thank you ever so much for such a fantastic presentation. As I said, I learned a huge amount. So as we mentioned before, Retina UK will be delivering at least one webinar every month. We've done so since the pandemic, so we are going to continue to do so next year. So this is the last of 2022. So we will kick off with a new program again in January. So look out in your newsletters and such like as to what is coming up. So we will be sending out a follow-up email after this evening's webinar. May well be early part of next week. So we'll include a link as to where you can watch Dominic's presentation again. And we'll also include those handouts that that Dominic has mentioned as well, and where you can get some further information on claiming these benefits. So once again, Dominic, thank you ever so much. A fantastic session. And thank you ever so much to everybody joining and for those who have asked your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.